Hello, and welcome to our weekly discussion about issues of importance to the Caucasus. The world has witnessed 3 weeks of a bloody conflict, 2 ceasefire agreements unraveling before our eyes, and children dying. Hello, I'm Dr. Joanne Lisosky, author and journalism educator, and with me today are Mr. Arif Shahmarli, former Azerbaijani ambassador to the COE and the EU, and Mr. Alex Raufoglu, US-Azerbaijani journalist. Gentlemen, the Armenian-Azerbaijan war is becoming horrific. Civilians are being targeted in Ganja. Ganja is 62 miles away from Nagorno-Karabakh. News organizations need to show 2 maps in order to explain this conflict. One of Nagorno-Karabakh and one that includes the city of Ganja. It's so far away. How can this continue? And where is the global outcry, Arif? Why are civilians being targeted? What's the goal of this kind of a tactic?
Thank you, John. Firstly, I would like to congratulate all Azerbaijani people with their national holiday. We have a national holiday today, and good news from the front. Our Azerbaijani army is retaking occupied territories. We have heard of Fizuli yesterday, and during the day, Khudafarin Bridge, which brings together the bridge between South Azerbaijan, which is part of Iran, and North Azerbaijan. And our troops are closing to Shusha. Quite victorious news coming from the front, and this is good. Of course, now we have to think about sometime any war has to end with a peace deal. When it comes to Ganja, firing, and I was born in Ganja, and Ganja is a city where I came to life, and I lived there for quite a long time. My grandparents lived there. Every summer we were there. Of course, there were 2 strikes, particularly terrific, because these were missiles, ballistic missiles, launched on the civilian part of the city. There was not any military infrastructure nearby, and we have seen destruction. Destruction is enormous. It is like from one missile, we have seen just 4 multi-store buildings just collapsing, and many civilian casualties. During the first strike, around 11 civilians, including children, died, and during the second, we have seen 13 civilians and over 40 injured. And of course, damage to infrastructure, to the buildings is terrible. And Ganja is not in the military zone. Ganja is not part of Karabakh. This is the second biggest city in Azerbaijan, a historical city. And of course, Azerbaijan doesn't answer with the fire outside of the military zone, so that we don't fire Armenia. Probably the aim is to push Azerbaijan to fire back on the territory of Armenia, so that they can apply to a collective security treaty with Russia and ask Russia to come to military aid. Political leadership does it very cleverly. We don't respond on fire to civilians with the return fire, but our military targets military infrastructure and military equipment in the occupied territories. And we have seen revenge fire coming immediately after Ganja was fired. We have seen pictures from drones that destroy tanks, artillery units, and mortar systems. That's it. I believe that there were two proposals for ceasefire. One was made in Moscow with mediation of the Foreign Minister Lavrov. Two foreign ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia were invited. After 11 hours of discussion, we have seen Lavrov coming out and saying that the ceasefire agreement is reached. But many experts immediately believe that this ceasefire wouldn't sustain, because normally when you talk and you come to make your declaration, normally three should come together. We have seen only Lavrov coming out without Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan and Armenia, so that it shows that the discussions were very, very difficult, and probably not everything was agreed. And the paper itself says that it was just empty paper. There wasn't any detail, just general wording, which meant that this ceasefire wouldn't sustain. And we have seen that just 5 minutes after the ceasefire agreement was signed, it was broken immediately. There was fire on Ganja, in fact, on the night of 10th. We have seen yesterday another ceasefire agreement was achieved on the request of France, another co-chair of the Minsk group. This ceasefire was brokered by Emmanuel Macron, but we have seen that it didn't continue longer than the first ceasefire. So probably it will be very difficult at this moment to reach ceasefire, because military, there is no change in the military tactics, and there is no political will of either side to say that we are ready to talk. In fact, we are waiting for Armenian side to say that, okay, let's talk about liberation of occupied territories. And we see, on the contrary, calls to continue the war till the end, calling this war like for life and death war. But I think that this is not wise. In fact, Azerbaijan doesn't ask for anything else than liberation of its occupied territories, which are outside of Karabakh. Now, most of the military activities are going out in the territories away of this autonomous, former Soviet autonomous region. This is Fizuli, this is Gubadli, this is Jebrail, this is Agdara. These regions have not been part even of Karabakh. Why you wouldn't liberate it even in advance? Paul Goebel, I have seen his interview with you. He was one of the architects of the peace deal, when sides could agree. Probably the best proposal that existed up to now on the table, which followed by the Key West agreement, when presidents of Azerbaijan and Armenia came to Florida Key West. It was very Stork Talbot, Under Secretary of State, was involved and particularly interested in this agreement. And if that time the peace deal would be agreed, now Armenia and Azerbaijan would be friendly countries with territories liberated, with corridors connecting Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan, Armenia having connections with the Armenian minority in Karabakh. We would have pipelines going through Armenia. There was also pipeline, and Armenia wouldn't be poor country, but a country through which territory gas and oil goes to European markets. And what we have now, unfortunately, politicians sometimes they believe that they had battle. It wasn't the war won. Armenia believed that they won the war. and it was a big mistake. It wasn't the war. It was battle won. You know, when you make the peace deal, you have to make sure that both sides are happy. If one side is not happy, finally it will backlash. It will come back, and you will be punished for self-confidence and not taking the realities into picture. And now what we have. Unfortunately, we don't have ceasefire, and lots of young people die, civilians suffer. But I believe that maybe in November we can have, probably not this month. I believe that November there could be a ceasefire. I believe in this for many reasons. I can explain this why I think that November would be maybe after 5th, 10th November probably is a time when we can, at least on the military scene, we will have more wider picture. We'll have Georgian elections, US elections, not less important, and so that I am very optimistic about the future scenarios.
So why not, with the civilians being targeted, why not more at this time? Is it because the rest of the world is sort of distracted by their own problems? Why isn't there a global outcry against targeting civilians? Do you have an idea on that, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I thank you both for setting the stage perfectly well, and happy birthday, Azerbaijan. And you mentioned civilians, John. Unfortunately, today we also woke up to news. We learned that one of ganja victims yesterday, a teenager, was supposed to celebrate her birthday today, along with Azerbaijan. The question is very plausible. It's a very important question because this entire whole Nagorno-Karabakh problem, whether it was an on or off conflict, missed significantly the real, live human factors. Just like Arif said, for 27 years, this entire negotiation process, forgot the fact that there are IDPs, living, were kicked out of their home and never ever had a chance to return back and visit their homes. And today, for those of us who, like, when the war broke out and we were like ready of this entire process, we are like, hey, we've been waiting for peace for more than 2 decades. So what happened? I lost one of my friends. Last week, and I was thinking about anything that we thought we had enough power to prevent this from happening. And then I thought, so it was my high school classmate. And I thought about his stories. He was a Karabakh refugee and IDP living in Baku. I remember how he brought up pictures showing when he and his family were kicked out of Nagorno-Karabakh back then. His father was carrying him, and Armenians shot his father in the back, and then he lost his father, and his mom just screaming, and there are pictures of that, very well documented pictures that he was circulating around when we were back at school, and I couldn't stop him from returning back 2 weeks ago to Nagorno-Karabakh, because guess what? This is the first time in 27 years that he and other IDPs came to understand that this is the only chance for them to return back and see their homes. So this entire process, the so-called like negotiation, resell, whatever you want to name it, significantly missed the empathy that we were as a losing side of the war. We all deserve to have. Look at Europe, look at the history. You will see 27 years is more than enough for any country to stand up and at least apologize for what they do. I mean, there is no, simple sympathy towards them. Look at the international. It's a very good question. I really appreciate you asking that question. That where is the international community when they kill civilians? Yes, these are the civilians, and they were kicked out of their homes. and there was no sympathy, empathy towards them. And I remember back early in 2000s, Azerbaijan initiated a fact-checking mission. It was a UN-backed, OSCE mission that was sent to Nagorno-Karabakh, and they documented resettlement process in Nagorno-Karabakh. And we learned back then for the first time that apparently Armenians were, resettling, engaging in resettlement, bringing people from outside. But no one ever, none from, as you mentioned, international community, from Armenian side, ever asked or ever expressed any sympathy, towards these people that, lost their homes, and they moved to inland, and for 27 years. And now, we see same thing is happening, same script is being played. Civilians in Ganja, in a peaceful city, innocent city, are being, murdered. They're being killed, bombed, sleeping kids, and including, as I mentioned, a teenager who was supposed to celebrate her birthday today. It was bombed. And there is no, international coverage. The only question I keep receiving when I write about that, on Twitter, on social media, the only question I keep receiving is, hey, why are you not talking about, Nagorno-Karabakh, what Azerbaijan is doing in Nagorno-Karabakh? And, this, hey, don't talk about Ganja, talk about our story, is not only silly, it's dangerous. I even mentioned that on social media, that, human factor is missing significantly. And one more note about this point, about this question, that, who is behind that? International community, I think they tend to consume news from, some certain circles that basically link to, one side of the story. Unfortunately, I don't know how to put that, because I don't want to live in with conspiracy theory. But as a matter of fact, you have Russia-backed actors perfectly placed, and including Armenians, perfectly placed. And I think they're prepared for this for a long time. In the news-making industry, and they keep diverting attention from what is going on, particularly in Azerbaijan. Like Arif mentioned, this whole story is this whole tragic news that we keep receiving every single day has nothing to do with Armenia. It's all about Azerbaijan. I understand. I'm trying to see. I'm pushing myself to see both sides of the story, and trying to consume news from both Armenian sources and Azerbaijani sources. But the fact that we keep talking about monarchy, but real life story, real life tragedies happening in Azerbaijan is a clear example to another disinformation campaign that we are facing right now. First, Nagorno-Karabakh war, which ended up bringing victory to Armenia, was obviously back then driven by Russian disinformation campaign, and Russian military forces. Obviously, they were behind that too. Azerbaijan being at least 4 times, in terms of its size, in terms of its military capability, bigger than Armenia back then, was a losing side. And this war was supposed to be resolved in the last decade at least. I mean, and again, 27 years, so-called negotiation process, obviously doesn't allow us to justify the war. Obviously, I did raise my voice when the war broke out. But on the other hand, I'm trying to think about human, real life human stories that have missed for 2 decades, and this same thing is happening again from international spotlight. And this is a very good question. Why I have so many, reasons to, to try to, explain it, but I don't think it's fathomable, given the fact that we are right now in the middle of the story. This is not something, happening some far away. I mean, we every day, every single day, we keep receiving, real life cases, and none of them are being covered, unfortunately.
Thank you, Alex. I know it's very personal to both of you, and thank you too, Arif. you sort of hinted at something that is really of interest to me. The modern wars now, you hinted at this, modern wars are now often fought with words and pictures. And the same is happening here. We have two sides with two different perspectives. And when you step back and try to be unbiased about it, you are still getting less information from one side than you are from the other side. That's the global media is attending more to one side than the other side. So it seems to me, someone viewing this from afar, that Armenia is doing a much better job of portraying this war and portraying themselves as the victims in this war. And the globe, the world, tends to rally around the victims. And I mean, why is Armenia winning the war on words and pictures at this point? What can Azerbaijan do to sort of mitigate this global war that's occurring, but the rhetoric seems to be one-sided?
Thank you, Joanne. You are absolutely right. The modern war, sympathy or antipathy is coming out of the pictures and stories. I would say that images of war are very important. And we see, in fact, images, both sides. I would say that both sides are working better. I wouldn't say that we are losing entirely the image war. Probably these two terrible strikes on Ganja get us more ground to show, to take some important steps.
That's true. I've seen many more pictures, horrific photographs that have come from Ganja.
Now, for example, it's not even important to show the building collapse, but simple teddy bear taken out of the collapsed building is more stronger image than something else. Teddy bear that belonged to some child who is under this wreckage of the building is stronger image, and I've seen this. For example, thanks to Turkish journalists, they are more professional than our local journalists, and they know how to take the right picture and the image, to present the image of the war in the correct way. Of course, when you see the news in the US, in California, for example, you would see, of course, media is more pro-Armenian because there are strong Armenian lobby. They are everywhere in the media, on the streets. But when you see France, the same. When you go to other places, you see more neutral. For example, of course, if you see the media in Turkey, you would think that all the Turkish media is pro-Azeri, for example. Or in Russia, you would also think that in Russia is pro-Armenian, but in general, you see hatred towards both Azerbaijanis and Armenians. I am surprised. They try to show that they support Armenia, but they try to humiliate all the time. That you depend on us. You see, you move towards the West, and this is your punishment because you, Pashinyan is a child of Soros. Soros is funding Pashinyan, and this is your concept. You are punished for that. They want to show that Armenia is in this state. They are losing because they turned from Russia towards the West, and this is their punishment. They want to underline on all their talk shows, on all this. Another very, Alex also mentioned that the more war goes, the more people get used to that. And attention is becoming less important. It is also serialization, I would call it, of the conflict. In the beginning, you see lots of images, people suffering, children, but if the war goes longer, people forget about that. And there is a danger of that also, because people are getting tired of this. They switch to another image. As we have seen, for example, one big story, takes another big story aside. Like Ukrainian events are less important now than it was like 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, because there is Karabakh story in our geography. And probably tomorrow there will be in the United States elections. People would forget about Karabakh war, about Belarus, about everything else. So Georgian elections are coming. But I believe that we have to work, of course, more with the media. Azerbaijani side decided, our government decided to close social media and to make limited information, and public knows only information coming from the official sources, from the Minister of Defense. I don't know, maybe it's even wise, because there is less panic, because otherwise people will spread, some terrible pictures, images of the war. And now we only see mostly Minister of Defense images, mostly drones targeting, planes, like targeting artillery or tanks or armored vehicles, etc., etc. But again, I think that today there are so many problems in each country, in each single country, with pandemic also. Now COVID is appearing again. It becomes a big story. In Belgium, during the last 24 hours, we have 10,000 new cases per day. It's huge amount. We see the same in other parts of Europe, in France, in Czech Republic is the highest ratio in the European Union. We have again these lockdowns, and so people are more thinking of their own immediate, surrounding, of their own problems, unless take care of other international problems. And South Caucasus, for many, is a remote part in somewhere where that maybe not many Americans know where Azerbaijan is or Armenia is. Only those who are close to diaspora, Armenian diaspora, they know something about. But most Americans, they are more interested. Who is more important, Jesus Christ or Donald Trump? Who is more popular?
Thank you, Arif, for reminding me about that.
John, given my journalistic background, just can I offer a line or
yes, Alex, it's your industry, the media. So you need to talk about this war on words here.
Thank you so much for bringing this up. There's a history of the Russian disinformation campaign in our, particularly in both in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, right? Depending on how far you spin the clock, you will be able to see how who is winning, who is losing this game in terms of getting armed with Russian information warfare tools. Armenia, like the first Karabakh war, was really good at it. I think Russia did a very good job in terms of I think taking over Azerbaijan's media landscape for more than a decade right now. I think they were preparing themselves for this day. What they missed in this case, dramatically, I think, was the fact that particularly social media activists from Azerbaijan, those who didn't be critical of the government, they got actually rallied around the fact this is something they did not calculate. They thought, okay, we have Azerbaijan media, we're controlling now, so we can come up with trumped up, stories. Like, for instance, Arif mentioned Syria story, like Syria is making this, basically a proxy war in Nagorno-Karabakh, particularly from day one when casualties were happening, to divert attention from actual casualties. It was Russian Foreign Affairs Ministry that planted that idea of Syrian mercenaries in the international English-speaking world. I mean, they were first time they came out and started like bringing some validity to those disinformation, and also Russian state media on Twitter. Not only they actually tried to confirm this news, they also put the word to American Defense Department's mouths that as if the U.S. government, particularly Pentagon, confirmed the fact that so-called fact that we have Syrian mercenaries. And it was us, actually, we and others, social media activists, we went against them. We reached out to the U.S. government. We basically we managed to to stop them at that time. So, but they never stopped. Russians are present. They're present in Nagorno-Karabakh right now. There's a Russian RT journalist like sitting in Nagorno-Karabakh and every single day denying every single statement coming out from Azerbaijani side. So they are in Armenia. They control Armenian media. Don't forget the fact that even though the Pashinyan has been in charge for more than 2 years right now, there is no independent media right now. So there was only Russian-run, Russia-backed media controlling Armenia's media landscape as well. So there are couple of journalists, social media activists, from Armenia side, but they all are just giving some platform to Russia, just half-baked, I would say, Russia-backed stories, so that we can easily just go after them and basically challenge them. So this is something Russia didn't calculate from the very beginning, that we, our social media, activists from Azerbaijan, when it comes to Nagorno-Karabakh, they will wear around the flag, they will start to dig out some truths. So they thought, okay, just because we criticize our government, so when it comes to domestic affairs, so we will turn our back and we'll just close our blind eyes when it comes to Russian disinformation campaign. So make no mistake, Russian media, Russian disinformation, there's foot soldiers are the ones that are running the show right now.
Interesting. Thank you, Alex. That's really interesting. And it makes me think about how the war itself, the Armenian-Azerbaijan war, is popular among the citizens in each country. And it has fomented this unusual patriotism among these two countries. But, however, it's the meaning of the war itself is completely different on both sides. In Armenia, the term used to describe the war is genocide, right? In Azerbaijan, it's the motherland war. And I guess that's not unusual to have both sides have a different meaning. But the war isn't in Armenia, it's in Azerbaijan. And how would you describe the different perspectives, Arif? Why are we getting such dramatically different perspectives from and the patriotism growing on both sides?
You're absolutely right. There is a huge patriotism and will to fight to the end. Any calls for ceasefire are taken very negatively. People, whenever there is like calls from Russia or co-chairs, and the government says that there is talks to have a ceasefire agreement, you will see immediate reaction on the social media. Don't stop, this is a trap. Most of the people see ceasefire calls as a trap, so that to impose us new conditions, to take the pause and to start counterattack. So there is no trust between the sides. There is no trust to co-chairs, to the players. Nobody believes to Russian mediation. People don't believe to French mediation. They don't believe to anyone. This is very important because there is no mediator which has confidence of both sides. There can be some mediator who is more trusted in one or another side, but mostly, for example, in Azerbaijan, we don't trust to Russian mediation efforts, to Lavrov, these Moscow talks. There is no many sympathy to French mediation because Macron made very serious mistake in the beginning when he blamed mostly Azerbaijan. He also based his accusations on Armenian sources, and which were unfounded. For example, there were in the beginning lots of talks about a Turkish plane downing the Russian, Armenian Russian plane, you know, and there were not any evidences. You know, if NATO plane fired on a Russian-made plane, at least you have to get some parts of the missile. there is no missile, so that how one plane shut down another plane, and there is no traces because they said that the plane fall on Armenian territory. Then show please us the parts of the missile. So there are lots of information war, and generally for us it is patriotic war because we fight for our territory. It is internationally recognized territory. UN 4 resolutions call that Armenia occupies 7 Azerbaijani regions. We don't speak even about Karabakh. Karabakh, for many years, for 26 years, Azerbaijan was saying that let's talk about these occupied territories. There were different formulas: 5+2, 6+1, 3+2+2. There were Kives, there were Madrid, there were Kazan, and there were international guarantees that were proposed. Just start doing, at least start to liberate one region, so that you can say that we liberated one region. Now, when the war is going on, when people are dying, it's very difficult to talk about new formulas because everything is destroyed, process is destroyed, line of engagement is destroyed. Co-chairs, there is not the same trust to co-chairs. Probably the new group has to be set up because there is elements of mistrust. What during 26 years, co-chairs, what they did, they were traveling between Yerevan, Baku, Geneva, Paris, visiting trying the Azeri cuisine, Armenian, French, Swiss, and nothing. 26 years without any result. They can say that, we proposed. No, just proposing is not enough. There should have been mechanism just to convince Armenia that you have to do something. Many Armenian presidents, Ter-Petrosyan, the first Armenian president, he said that we have to make the peace with Azerbaijan. Later, we will regret not accepting this deal. What was done? He was removed from power. He was labeled as a traitor of Armenian nation. The last president of the Soviet Republic of Armenia, Demirchan. By that time, he was the chairman of the Armenian parliament. When we had almost agreed on the Key West deal, in '98 it started. Just before sides were too close to signing this deal, historical, very important. What happened in Armenia? They fired in the parliament of Armenia, killing chairman of the parliament, 2 vice president chairmen of the parliament, this Karen Demirchan and his two deputies. Prime Minister of Armenia was killed. Many members of the parliament was killed. So each time when we were close, something happens in Armenia and nationalistic feelings overwhelm, and everything we had to start from the beginning. So now Pashinyan could have done something. We were believing that he is a Democrat. He is democratically elected, chosen by the people. What he did, he started irritating. On the contrary, he started visiting Karabakh. His wife started to posing with Kalashnikov in wife of Prime Minister of Armenia, posing with Kalashnikov and firing on Azeri side. Was it constructive? No, it was populist. It was for Facebook images, but it irritated people. When a wife of Prime Minister in military uniform starts, exercising and firing on the side of Azerbaijan. Why? This is a democratically elected prime minister, so that he brought his country to the tragedies of today.
It's a very interesting argument, if you don't mind.
No, please. Thank you, Arif. That was very informative about the whole idea of patriotism and where it starts and what it becomes. Alex, please go.
Yeah, I just want to take it from exactly where the ambassador left in terms of Pashinyan. I think he was obviously trying to consolidate power, and the Russian-backed opposition, they were against him, and obviously, like I mentioned, in absence of independent media, all these factors kick in. But look at today. It took for 24 hours for Armenian entire government machine to come up with so-called facts, their own versions of facts, to deny ganja. I mean, deny ganja. I'm talking about all these pictures that you guys we both mentioned. Video footages are out there. They deny that it happened, and they say, "Hey, Azerbaijan did it itself, against its own people." So, from Azerbaijan's perspective, what's going on right now is Azerbaijan is engaging in a rescue operation. So we're going to get our land back. This is not how we were supposed to do it. We were supposed to get it back through the negotiation process, but enough is enough. 27 years is more than enough. So we're going to get it back. From Armenia's perspective, look at their narrative, and you mentioned perfectly well that they are talking about genocide. I'm in Washington, D.C., and the conventional wisdom here, based on Armenian narrative, is that don't let Azerbaijanis and Turks come and engage in ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh. Now, here's my argument. Armenians are blaming Azerbaijan on deemed to be something that they have done themselves for 27 years. There is no single Azerbaijani living in Nagorno-Karabakh territory, occupied territory, nor in Armenia. Entire South Caucasian region used to represent the diversity. Look at Georgia right now. Arif mentioned the upcoming election in Georgia. 12% of Georgian voters that are going to vote this weekend are Azerbaijanis and Armenians. In Azerbaijan, we used to have Armenians living in Azerbaijan. We have Georgians living in Azerbaijan. We call them Guraz. We have all these phrases we use against each other. We have Azeris, used to have Azeris living in Armenia. Right now, entire country, Armenia, and also occupied territories became the this mono-ethnic island or whole in the entire region. This was not the case. Again, that's why their narrative doesn't hold up. They will go back to take it back to a century ago, what happened between them and some Turks involved, all this stuff. That's why they're trying to involve these foreign players to the region. Look, I mean, your first question was about why won't the international media cover what's going on right now in Azerbaijan, or particularly casualties. Here's the story. The international media will push out so many articles questioning whether or not there's a Syrian fighter in Azerbaijan. But we are getting every day, people being attacked, while sleeping at home. Now the question is, are there foreign fighters, right now illegally acting in Azerbaijan? Yes, there are. Is there news for you? Yes, there are foreign fighters right now acting against Azerbaijani people in Azerbaijan. They are Armenians. Since when we have mandated Armenian military to, enter Azerbaijani territory and kill our own people at home? There's a real life, like I mentioned, actual story out there. But we would just still start, looking for some, outsiders, whether or not, there are outsiders in Azerbaijan are doing that they should not be allowed to do. That's one point. That's why their narrative will not hold. It's a very good question why Armenians and Azeris narratives are different. But there are facts out there, and we should all refer to facts. We were supposed to learn how to live in peace together if we didn't want to die at war together.
Thank you, Alex. That's profound. I want to sort of close with talking a little bit about what something Paul Goebel said, and he's from the US, and he said it's very important not to confuse ceasefire with frozen conflict and peace. Those are three entirely different things. And sometimes a ceasefire can lead to peace, but it likely in this case will lead to a frozen conflict which may or may not lead to peace. What do you suggest to, at the very least, to keep the Russian bombs from blowing up children and killing children and civilians? What do you suggest? What's the next step? Arif, what do you think?
It is a very difficult question, and I think that the Paul Goebel said it correctly. Some ceasefire agreement can lead to lasting peace, but mostly in our case, in fact, Bishkek agreement was about ceasefire. It wasn't the peace deal. That's why it the war started again, because peace deal is made between, at least when two sides really get their minimum, something that they both are happy with the deal. It happens very rarely, but it might happen. Second option, peace agreement, is when one side won completely, another side lost, and they have to accept, otherwise they will have even worse consequences. And the third peace deal is when it is imposed, but it wouldn't be lasting. In fact, probably in Bishkek it was a ceasefire, but it was also imposed, and we both were weak, and Russia was a big dominant country. I think that now much will depend on the situation on the ground. We see Azerbaijani army has won quite important victories, but winning the war by the army doesn't mean winning the political battle and diplomatic battle. Now, much will depend on the ability of diplomats and politicians to win the peace. I think that the German Chancellor, who once said that German people lost the war and now we have to win the peace. Now we have to win the peace. We won the war. Probably, at least at this stage, where our army has liberated quite important part of the occupied territories. Not all of them, but at least our army showed that it's capable of liberating its territories. I think that for Armenia it is important to start peace talks, because they have no capacity to continue the war. We have at least 5 times higher population. Our military showed its superiority, not only on its number of the soldiers, but technological superiority. We, during the last 10-15 years, Azerbaijani army was buying the most sophisticated weapons, including the drones. Probably the war of the 21st century is the war of drones, and we have seen how they are important in the modern combat operations. Tanks are absolutely worthless against the drones. All armored vehicles are worthless because drones are flying somewhere, and through the skies they destroy heavy tanks, modern tanks, and they are armored. Tanks are armored from the front and from the sides, but they are not armored against the missiles striking them from the top. Not only drones, but also modern electronic equipment. Now, Azerbaijani artillery is not just artillery, but very sophisticated electronic systems of navigation. Azerbaijani army was buying lots of Israeli weapons, which showed their effectiveness against Russian-made technologies. Still, I believe that Russian ballistic missiles are very powerful. They're capable of damaging and making lots of damage to civilians. We have seen in Ganja, but I don't think that by using them, Armenia lost more than anything else, because they lost public opinion. They lost the support that they could have got because of their superior lobbyist superiority. Because people see the images of this teddy bear taken out of the collapsed building because of this Soviet ballistic missile. Using ballistic missile against a peaceful city is unacceptable. And Russia had to tell its Armenian ally when selling the ballistic missile that ballistic missiles, you can use them against military infrastructure, military units, but not populated 500,000 city of Ganja. And they lost the war when they first time used the missile against the Ganja. Now what they can do, they cannot say anything, because even in Russia, Russian media says, but you use the weapon, the two missiles against the completely peaceful city of Ganja. I still believe that now we have made lots of concessions for the last 27 years. Now the side that want to win the peace has to make the right decision and stop this distraction, because future military operations would not be in favor of Armenia. They have seen also that all this collective security treaty organization, it is just bubble. And Russia has so many headaches inside of Russia and around the Russia. They have, Belarus situation, Belarus. People are very unhappy about Lukashenko and Putin supporting Lukashenko. Russia has tense relations with Ukraine, with Moldova, Georgia, Azerbaijan. Now, do you remember about this cordon sanitaire plan, which was proposed by Balladur, Prime Minister of France? Now Russia is getting more and more isolated, and they have to think of themselves. And Armenia has to understand that living in peace with the neighbors, not blaming the neighbors. Now they blame and shame Georgia for not letting Russian military equipment go to Georgia. But I've spoken with the Georgian diplomats. They say that during the last, after Georgian war with Russia, when Georgia was occupied in 2008, there were many discussions in UN, European Union, Council of Europe. Armenian delegation never supported territorial integrity of Georgia, never. And now they say that Georgia should be on our side because Georgians are Christians. They have to stop thinking from the perspective of the Christianity, Islam. It's nonsense. It is nonsense. Our biggest ally, one of the biggest ally of Azerbaijan is Israel, Jewish Israel. Our allies are, they have to think from the perspective of the modern world, not to speak about Armenian King Tigran. They claim that it's Armenian King Tigran II who lived 150 years before Jesus Christ, and they say that during his kingdom, Armenia was a great country and Karabakh was part of Armenia. Come on, guys. Firstly, it's not true. Secondly, we have international law, 21st century law. All international documents say that Karabakh and these 7 regions are internationally recognized part of Azerbaijan. We have our documents which says that this is my building. If I live in this house, I live here.
Can I offer, if you don't mind, very brief?
Yeah, they say that this is my kitchen. I will say that, sorry, I have the document which says that this kitchen is mine and that bedroom is also mine. If you want, prove it. I have the proof. I have the documents on this house, but you don't have, and you cannot say that this kitchen belongs to you because your ancestors lived on this land 2 centuries before Jesus Christ, and say that they lived on this area. Sorry, guys, we live in the 21st century, and we have to take the international reality as they are. Living in peace requires courage. Azeris and Armenians can live together. I believe in this. We have many things in common. Many things in common. We may hate each other, but there are more common things between us and Georgians, Armenians, Turks than between Azeris and Americans or French or Germans, because we lived in the same geography. We discuss about Dolma, to whom Dolma belongs, or to whom one musical instrument or another Muslim belongs, so that we can live in peace. But we have to take courage and call your population that the peace is the only solution for Armenia, because Armenia is isolated now. Because of their policies, they have no diplomatic relations with Turkey, tense relations with Georgia, in war with Azerbaijan. They relied on Russia, and Russia has its own interests. They wouldn't fight the Third World War because of useless Armenia. What Armenia can propose in a response to Russia? They cannot even pay for their weapons that Russia gives them. They cannot even pay for their missiles that they bomb Azerbaijani cities. Russia gives them as a credit for their loyalty. That's the reality.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your passion and your great information. Alex, what do you think about how can we save the children?
Just very brief, you're being the winner side of the first Karabakh war, I mean, by occupying the territory. Armenia is the only side that benefits the frozen conflict, or regional like ceasefire period, which lasted for more than 20 years. The point is, like, even today, take a look at social media. I mean, I am being attacked by Armenian, social media activists just by calling Nagorno-Karabakh a conflict zone. So they moved on. They don't even consider it a conflict zone anymore. They engaged in resettlement. They brought the people. They lived there for 27 years, and their president claimed it, Nagorno-Karabakh being Armenia. So after this, all like 27 years, they enjoyed, they benefited, this quote-unquote frozen conflict, approach to the conflict. So that's why I think, from Azerbaijan's perspective, enough is enough. We need to really find a way to resolve that. Just asking the sides to, just stop attacking. I think for those of us who, despise the war, might sound plausible, but at the same time, ceasefire is not ceasing the fire. So, and on the other hand, you have one side is engaging in, as I mentioned, resettlement, and they claim the territory. So now my point is, we need to offer something more than just, just calls for ceasefire. The White House, I think, being in Washington, I think the White House needs to step in and come up with an actual plan that puts the IDPs to the front and center. That's a non-starter. I mean, if you don't offer anything, just beyond this IDP angles, just having leaders meeting or call tourists visiting the region from time. This is not how you resolve the problem. They are real life people, as I mentioned, that have been deprived of return back their home for 27 years. On the other hand, you have the other side, hugely benefits, even in a way that they don't call this a conflict zone anymore. I mean, I had to go to Armenian Foreign Ministry and pick up the link to their own the notion of the story, so that's circulated around social media. Hey, even if your own minister says that this is a conflict, but they moved on, they resolved it already, and they don't see any more place for Azerbaijanis or Azerbaijan, in the World Cup. That's why I think, yes, the status quo has changed. This is a fact. I'm sorry to say that this has changed militarily, because we were hoping that it would be, changed. They would just move the needle. They could do that through negotiation process. We needed as I mentioned, to use all the tools we had in our toolkits, rather than just having president to president, meetings, the people-to-people negotiation process, all the other avenues that have not been discovered yet. There are so many stones that we haven't even took and look under yet. So now we need to go back. But if we go back, if Azerbaijan is asked to stop, doing what it is doing, then we need to have something more than something tangible, and push the IDPs up front and center. This is the first step, and obviously the rest could be discussed. But Azeri, people, I think they just woke up all by sudden, including myself. We realized that apparently we have a next door neighbor that they moved on already, and even calling Nagorno-Karabakh a conflict zone, is not acceptable for them anymore. So this is something we need to start thinking about.
Thank you, Alex. Let's hope we can win the peace, right? And I'm so glad that you brought up the IDPs. That's something that I really wish we heard more about in the West. The nearly 1 million people who've been displaced 27 years ago, not just now, and more being displaced now because their family homes are being destroyed and their families are being killed. So thank you again for this spectacular discussion. I've learned so much from both of you. And I want to thank my colleagues, Mr. Arif Shahmarli, Ambassador Arif Shahmarli, and Alex Raufoglu. Please join us again, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and happy birthday, Azim.
Thank you.